The contract no human ever expected Mark was just an ordinary man living far away from Earth. After a mining accident on a distant planet, he was left without a job, without friends, and without any reason to stay. He didn't even know why he was still breathing. The alien world was cold, strange, and unkind. Humans were not welcome, and the jobs were rare. Most aliens ignored him, and some even laughed when they passed him by. He had sold everything he owned, except his pride, and even that was growing weaker day by day. One day, when Mark was sitting outside a food station, tired and hungry, someone stopped in front of him. It was an alien woman, taller than any he had seen before. Her skin had a soft glow like silver, and her eyes were sharp but calm. She wore long flowing clothes and moved like she was someone important. Mark looked up confused, wondering what she wanted. "You are human," she said. Her voice was clear, without emotion. "Yes," he replied, trying to sit straight. "I have an offer for you," she said, and handed him a glowing cube, a hologram. Opened from it, showing a contract written in both alien script and English. "I want to hire you. You will be the father of my child. You will live in comfort. You will be fed and protected." Mark stared at the contract in shock. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked. "No," she replied. "I am serious. The agreement is legal and binding. You will not be harmed." He blinked and rubbed his eyes, thinking maybe he was hallucinating from hunger. "Why me? Why a human?" "I have my reasons," she said. "You are compatible. You are also available." Mark didn't know what to say. He had no money, no future, and no plan. But this offer was strange, yes, but it was also a chance. A warm bed, food, safety. No one had offered him even a smile in months, and now this woman was offering him everything. "What do I have to do exactly?" he asked carefully. "You must live in my house," she explained. "You must act as the father to my coming child. You must follow a few rituals. And you must not leave the estate without permission." He felt uneasy. It sounded too easy and too strange at the same time. But something inside him whispered that this was his only way forward, so he nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "I'll do it." The alien woman pressed her finger onto the cube. "Say your name clearly," she said. "Mark Elson." The cube glowed, then beeped. "Contract accepted," it said dot as soon as he spoke. Two tall alien guards appeared from the shadows and stood beside him. Mark looked around, suddenly nervous. "Come with me," the woman said. He stood up and followed her silently. The walk to her estate was long and quiet. No one said a word. When they reached her house, Mark was stunned. It was not just a house, it was a palace. The floors were made of crystal, the walls shone like polished metal, and everything inside smelled clean and expensive. The guards stayed outside. Mark was led to a private room with a soft bed, warm lights, and even books in human language. "Everything you need is here," she said. He looked around, amazed. "So, when does this begin?" She looked at him carefully. "It has already begun. The child is growing, but I need your presence. The child must feel you near." Mark's mind was spinning. He didn't even know her name, and now he was part of something that didn't make sense. He opened his mouth to ask a question but closed it again. For now, he just wanted to rest. That night, as he lay in bed, he couldn't sleep. The room was perfect, but his mind was full of questions. Who was this woman? Why did she want a human father? What kind of child was this? Was this even real? The next morning, she introduced herself as Soraya. She spoke very little, but every word felt important. She asked him to place his hand on her belly and repeat certain phrases in her language. "It helps the bonding," she said. He did what she asked, but it felt strange. The skin under his hand was warm, and he thought he felt something move. A tiny kick. He pulled back in surprise. Saraya simply smiled. She knows you. Mark didn't know what to say. This wasn't a normal job. This wasn't just pretending. Something real was happening, and he had no control over it. Later that day, he noticed something else. The house had no windows that opened. The doors were all locked. The guards outside didn't leave. And the small metal ring on his wrist blinked red every time he touched a control panel. He tried once to walk toward the outer gate, and the bracelet shocked him lightly. Not painful, but enough to say, "You're not free." That night, when he looked in the mirror, he finally said the words aloud. "I didn't get hired. I got trapped." And deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. I wasn't hired. I was chosen. Mark had only been in Saraya's home for 3 days, but already it felt like a different world. Not just because of the shining floors, glowing walls, or strange smells, but because everything felt too perfect, too quiet. Even the silence had weight, like the walls were listening. He wasn't treated badly. In fact, he was treated too well. Every morning his meals were waiting hot, fresh, and healthy. His clothes were clean before he even realized they were dirty. The air always smelled of calm herbs. But he didn't feel free. He felt watched, controlled, like a guest in a golden prison. Mark had lived rough for a long time. He knew when something was off. And this wasn't right. Saraya wasn't cruel. She spoke gently and always looked calm, but her words had a cold edge. Every night, she asked him to repeat phrases in her native tongue while placing his hand on her belly. "She responds to your voice," Saraya said. "It makes her calm." But it wasn't just about calming the baby. Each time he touched her, Mark felt a strange warmth flow into him, like his energy was being pulled. He didn't say anything at first, thinking maybe it was just in his head. But the feeling grew stronger every time. And then, on the 4th night, something happened that shook him deeply. He was sitting in the hallway outside his room, bored and restless. There was nothing to do but eat, sleep, and pretend to be calm. That's when he noticed a small blinking light coming from a cabinet nearby. He checked the hallway, no one was around, and slowly opened the drawer. Inside was a black data pad. He picked it up. The screen flickered and came to life. There were files in both alien language and English. He tapped one of them. A photo popped up. It was a photo of him as a child, not a photo someone could find online. No, this picture was from his personal family album. A memory from his 5th birthday on Earth. He remembered the red balloon in the background. He remembered his dad's old cap on his head. He remembered that picture because it was the last birthday before everything changed. But how in the stars did Saraya have it? Mark dropped the pad like it had burned his hand. His heart was racing. He picked it up again, opened more files. There were recordings of his school records, medical scans, even footage of him walking through the refugee market 3 months ago. She had been watching him, long before she made the offer. That's when the fear began to take over. This wasn't a job. This wasn't random. He hadn't been lucky. He hadn't been hired. He had been selected. And worst of all, he had no idea why. The next morning, he confronted Saraya. "I want answers," he said firmly. "Why did you choose me? Why do you have pictures of my childhood? How do you know so much about me?" Saraya sat still. Her expression didn't change. "Because you are not like the others," she said. "What does that even mean?" "There is something inside you," she replied softly. "Something ancient. Something valuable. We scanned hundreds of humans. You were the only one with it. You carry a rare genetic marker key." Mark shook his head. "I'm just a man. A poor, unlucky man trying to survive." "No," she said. "You are the perfect match. For me, for her." Mark stepped back, his hands shaking. "This is wrong. You tricked me." "I offered you shelter, food, safety," she said. I told no lies. You didn't tell the truth either, he growled. She stood now. You are angry. That's expected, but it changes nothing. The child is growing, and your presence is necessary. Mark turned to leave the room, but 2 guards stood at the door already. Trapped. Again. That night, he didn't eat. He just sat on the floor of his room, staring at the wall. He felt like a prisoner, a tool, something they had tested, chosen, and used. What was this genetic key she talked about? Why was it in him? And what would happen once the baby was born? He looked down at the bracelet still blinking on his wrist. He had to get out. He had to know the whole truth. And if they had chosen him for something special, then maybe, just maybe, he could choose his own fate. The child wasn't hers. Mark thought he had agreed to something strange, but nothing could prepare him for what he discovered next. Days passed slowly in Soraya's home. He followed her rules, repeated the phrases she gave him, placed his hand on her stomach when told, and tried not to ask questions. But the more he stayed, the more his mind screamed that something wasn't right. The baby hadn't been born yet, but sometimes he could feel strange vibrations when he touched Soraya's belly. Not normal kicks or movement. It felt like energy, flowing through his fingers. And sometimes Soraya would go into a trance, eyes glowing faintly while whispering words he didn't understand. One evening, as he was walking down a side hallway he had never entered before, Mark noticed the door to a lower chamber was slightly open. He looked around. No guards, no footsteps, just silence. His curiosity burned stronger than his fear. He slipped inside. What he found made his legs weak. It wasn't a nursery. It was a laboratory. Rows of glowing tanks filled the room, each one holding something inside. Some held fluids, others had small lights blinking above them. And in the center, a larger tank shaped like a womb held a growing figure. A baby, not fully human, not fully alien. Something in between. Mark stepped closer. The child's face was peaceful, eyes closed, skin soft and pale. She looked familiar. Too familiar. He gasped. The baby looked like him, his own nose, his cheekbones, even the same little swirl in the hairline. He stumbled backward, shaking. It wasn't just that she looked like him. She was him, his blood, his genes. But if that was true, then what about Soraya? Just then, a noise behind him made him spin. It was Soraya. She wasn't angry. She looked calm, almost sad. You found her, she said. Mark's voice trembled. That baby, she's not growing in you, is she? Soraya nodded slowly. No, I carry an empty shell. The real one grows here. Her body is being protected, nourished, shaped. Then why the lie? He demanded. Because truth is dangerous, she said softly. You would have run. Or worse, destroyed her. Mark shook his head in disbelief. You made me believe I was bonding with her. But this is all just fake? Soraya walked toward the tank. Not fake. The connection is still real. Your words, your touch, your thoughts, they all reach her. She hears you, feels you. That's why we needed you close. Mark stepped back. Why me? Why not one of your own people? You don't understand yet, she whispered. We tried with our own kind, but none could carry what she is. The DNA broke. The minds collapsed. But your blood, your line, it held. He stared at her. What are you talking about? Soraya looked at him with new eyes, softer, but more serious. We searched galaxies for someone like you. A human with the ancient strain. It was buried deep, but still active. Your ancestors were warriors, survivors of cosmic fire. Your blood is more than blood, it's memory. Mark's heart raced. I'm just a broken man who grew up in a broken home. "There's nothing special about me. You were never ordinary," she said. "You were made for something greater. You just never knew it." Mark couldn't breathe. He looked at the baby again. A soft glow formed around her as if she sensed him. His hand moved on its own and touched the glass. The baby stirred. One tiny hand pressed against the inside of the fan tank. Mark's breath caught. The connection was real. He pulled his hand away quickly, overwhelmed. "I want the truth," he whispered. "All of it," Soraya nodded. "Then you must listen. Not as a guest, not as a prisoner, but as a father." Mark looked back at the baby. The fear hadn't left him, but now something else was there too. Something dangerous, something powerful. It was growing inside her, and maybe inside him too. Asterisk. Escape plan, or so I thought. Mark didn't sleep that night. His body was tired, but his mind was on fire. Everything Soraya had told him echoed in his head. The baby wasn't growing inside her. She was growing in a machine, in a hidden lab, watched by guards and fed by wires. And yet, that child had his face, his blood, his warmth. Soraya said the baby needed him, that she responded to his voice. But Mark didn't feel like a father. He felt like a science experiment. By the next morning, one thing was clear: he had to get out. He had to leave this golden prison and find out the truth. For himself. Not the truth Soraya allowed him to see, but the one she was hiding behind calm eyes and soft words. He knew now that he was being used, watched, studied, and possibly replaced. Escape wouldn't be easy. The guards outside were fast and quiet. The bracelet on his wrist tracked every move he made. And the house, if it could still be called that, was more like a fortress, but Mark wasn't just any man anymore. He had something they didn't expect. Desperation. Over the next 2 days, Mark played the role of obedient father. He touched Soraya's false belly. He repeated the bonding phrases. He smiled when guards were near. He acted like he had accepted his place. But at night, he stayed awake. He memorized guard patterns. He tested door panels with a stolen piece of wire. He faked sleep while studying the cameras in the corners of his room. And then came his chance. During a systems glitch, he heard 2 guards talking about it in whispers. Security was running on backup. Cameras were delayed. Doors were less locked. He didn't have time to wait. He moved fast, wearing nothing but simple clothes and carrying a small stolen scanner. Mark slipped out through a maintenance tunnel behind the kitchen. It led into an old underground hallway filled with dust and unused lights. His heart beat like thunder in his ears. He didn't know how much time he had, but every second counted. The tunnel led to a secondary gate. It was half-rusted and the power lock flickered. Mark attached the scanner and held his breath. Scan accepted. The screen blinked. Click. The gate opened slowly. For the first time since entering Soraya's home, Mark saw the outside stars clear, cold, and real. But the freedom didn't last. Before he could step out, he heard a voice behind him. "You were never going to stay, were you?" It was Soraya, but this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a small group of other aliens, tall, quiet, and dressed in ceremonial armor. They weren't guards. They were leaders. Mark backed away, trying to act brave. "You lied to me about everything." Soraya didn't raise her voice. "You lied too. You said you accepted the contract. You said you were ready to be a father." Mark's eyes burned. "I didn't agree to be part of some breeding experiment. I didn't agree to give my DNA for war." Soraya stepped closer, her face softer now. "It was never for war. Then what is she for?" He snapped. "Why build her in secret? Why hide everything?" One of the robed aliens finally spoke. His voice was low and firm. "Because if others find out what she is, they will come for her." Mark stared at them. "What is she?" Soraya looked at him with something almost like sadness. She is hope, she is memory, she is rebirth, and she is in danger from every power in the galaxy. Mark didn't move. He was tired, confused, angry, but something inside him still cared. He remembered that tiny hand pressed against the tank, that soft glow in her skin, that feeling of warmth when she moved to his touch. She's just a child, he said quietly. She is more than that, Soraya said. And so are you. Mark looked at his wrist. The bracelet no longer blinked red. He had passed a test, or maybe he had never really been a prisoner. Maybe this was all a way to see who he was when the truth broke him. Whether he would run or return. He looked at the stars again. His escape door was still open, but his heart was already behind him, and that's when the alarm blared. A warning coming from the sky. Ships were entering the planet's orbit. Strange ones, human-made, and they were not here to visit. Mark turned slowly. Who else knows about the child? He asked. Soraya's eyes were cold now. Everyone. The secret of the hybrid program. The sky above Soraya's home turned dark, not from clouds, but from ships. Human ships. Their engines rumbled like thunder. Their lights scanned the surface below. And in that moment, Mark understood something terrifying. This wasn't just about him, or Soraya, or even the baby. This was bigger. Soraya didn't look surprised. The robed aliens behind her were already speaking into comm devices. Orders were given. Guards moved quickly. Hidden weapons came out of the ground. The peaceful home turned into a military base within minutes. Mark stood still, eyes fixed on the sky. How did they find us? Soraya didn't answer. She just looked at him. But her silence said enough. Mark clenched his fists. They knew all along, didn't they? Earth knew what you were doing. They let it happen. Soraya finally spoke. It was a deal. Your leaders signed it before you were born. In exchange for peace, they gave us samples. DNA, biometric data, names. You were always on the list. Mark's blood ran cold. I was sold before I even had a chance. You were chosen, she corrected. No, I was sold. His voice cracked. And now they're here to take it all back. Soraya looked away. They will not take her. The ground shook as the first ship landed just beyond the estate wall. Human soldiers in black armor stepped out. Their weapons were heavy. Their faces were cold. One of them carried a device that pointed toward the house, directly toward Mark. They're tracking me, he whispered. Soraya nodded. You're the key. Your blood, yourselves. They're following the signature. Mark backed away. So, what am I really? A father? A tool? A mistake? You are the start of something new, Soraya said. Then she guided him to a new chamber hidden behind the lab. The walls were different here, older, covered in carvings. Mark saw symbols of humans and aliens standing side by side. At the center of the room was a crystal table. On it, a book, not a digital one, a real one, with pages. This is the record, Soraya said. It tells of the first humans, before your Earth became what it is, when your kind traveled the stars freely. You lost that history, but we did not. Mark stared at the pages, reading names he didn't recognize, but somehow felt familiar. My ancestors, Soraya nodded. Your people were powerful once, but their power scared others. So alliances were broken. Bloodlines were hidden. You forgot, but the DNA remembered. He turned to face her. And the baby? She is the restart, Soraya said. A new mix of strength and peace, built from two forgotten paths. Mark's head was spinning. The walls, the ships, the lies, all crashing into him at once. Outside, the alarms grew louder. A message was broadcast in English. Surrender the asset. Surrender the human. You are surrounded. Mark looked at Soraya. They're talking about me and her. Yes, she said. And if I don't go with them? They'll kill everyone here, Soraya replied without emotion. Mark stared at the floor. His hands shook. He had never been a soldier. He had never fought for anything. He was just a broken man trying to survive. But now, something deep inside him was waking up. He looked at Soraya again. What happens if I choose her? What if I protect her? Soraya's face changed just a little. Then the future becomes something new. Mark stepped forward, his voice strong now. Tell me what to do. She reached out and placed her hand on his chest. Then listen to your blood. It will remember the way. Behind them, the baby's chamber opened. The glass melted away, and the child inside took her first breath in open air. Her eyes glowed with light, not human, not alien, but both. And then she spoke one word, one language, Father. Mark stood still. He no longer needed answers. He had made his choice. My blood. Their future. She stood there, small, fragile, glowing softly, and yet Mark had never seen anything so powerful. The child called him Father, just one word, but it broke every wall he had built around his heart. His legs felt weak, his mouth was dry. And yet, in that moment, he had never been more awake. The baby girl walked forward slowly, her balance perfect, her steps light. She shouldn't have been able to walk so soon. She had just left the tank, but somehow she already understood. She reached out to him, not confused, not scared, but calm, as if she had known him all along. Mark dropped to his knees and held her small hand. Her skin was warm like a sunbeam. He whispered, You're mine. Soraya watched silently. She carries the strength of a warrior and the heart of a human, she said. Your blood gave her both. Mark didn't respond. He was still trying to process it all. The child looked up at him with large silver blue eyes, and suddenly his fear didn't matter anymore. Outside, the human soldiers began to force their way through the security walls. The estate shook, lights flickered. Explosions in the distance signaled that they were no longer interested in talking. They want her, Mark said. They'll kill to take her, Soraya nodded. They don't understand. They only see danger, but you must show them something else. Mark held the girl closer. How can I protect her? I'm just one man. You are not just anything. Soraya replied, You carry what they fear, not because it is violent, but because it is free. Mark stood up, still holding the child. Then tell me what she really is. Soraya moved to a control panel and opened a hidden chamber below. Come, she said. Mark followed her down into a dark hallway glowing with blue lines. Inside were murals, ancient art drawn by alien hands. They showed a story. Humans long ago standing beside other alien races as equals. Warriors, teachers, builders of peace. But over time, the pictures changed. Humans were hunted, betrayed, and erased from memory. The galaxy had turned against them out of fear. She is the rebirth of that unity, Soraya explained. She is not a weapon. She is a message, a reminder. Mark stared at the final mural. It showed a man holding a child in one hand and a shield in the other, standing in front of a burning world. That's me, he whispered. Soraya nodded. She cannot survive without you, and you were made for this. Suddenly, a loud explosion shook the floor. The alarm changed tone. They've breached the final gate, Soraya said. You must go. Mark turned to her. You're not coming? I will buy you time, she said calmly. The escape path is ready. Follow it. The child already knows the way. Mark looked down. The little girl smiled and tugged his shirt, pointing toward a glowing door at the end of the corridor. How? He asked. She remembers through you, Saraya replied. Go, protect the future. Mark ran. The tunnel was long and full of strange markings. The lights blinked in patterns the child seemed to understand. She would touch the wall, and the doors would open. At one point, she even stopped him from stepping on a section of the floor seconds before it dropped into fire. She wasn't just smart. She was guided. They finally reached a hidden launch bay beneath the estate. A small spacecraft waited. Old, but powered. Mark jumped in, placed the child in the seat beside him, and powered up the engine. As the doors closed behind them, the screen showed Saraya's face one last time. You were not hired, Mark. She said, you were called, and you answered. Then the feed cut. The ship rose into the sky. Behind them, the estate exploded in fire and smoke as Saraya's defenses fell. But Mark didn't look back. He held the child close. She was humming softly. The stars opened ahead, like a path made just for them. Mark gripped the controls. My blood gave her life, he whispered. But now, she gives me purpose. He didn't know where they were going, but he knew one thing for sure. She was no longer just his future. She was the galaxy's. I was hired to be her father. Now I'll die to protect her. The stars were quiet now. Mark sat in the pilot's seat, hands shaking, eyes fixed on the dark space ahead. The child, his daughter, was asleep beside him, small arms curled against his side. Her soft hum still echoed in his ears like a lullaby made of light. He never wanted this. He didn't ask for any of it. But now, he couldn't imagine walking away. She had his blood, his eyes, his stubborn heart. And somehow, she had already saved him more times than he could count. Not with weapons, not with words, but just by existing. The ship beeped out warning. Multiple human warships were closing in. Mark glanced at the radar. They weren't firing yet, but they were coming fast. The signal was clear. Stop, surrender, and give up the child. He knew what would happen if he did. They would take her, study her, break her apart, call her dangerous because she was different, try to erase her before she could become something they didn't control. And Mark? He would vanish quietly, like all the other chosen before him. Not today. He stood up, walked to the back of the ship, and opened a storage panel. Inside, emergency gear, basic weapons, and a suit half human, half alien design. He had no formal training. He wasn't a hero. But he would fight with everything he had if they touched her. The baby stirred. Her silver blue eyes opened, glowing faintly. Are you scared? He whispered. She blinked once, then smiled. No. Mark smiled too, but only for a second, because the ship shook. A voice came over the speakers. Unregistered vessel. You are carrying unauthorized biological material. Prepare to be boarded. Mark responded with silence. He turned to the child and knelt beside her. No matter what happens, I won't let them hurt you. You hear me? I'll protect you. I'll die for you. She reached up and placed her small hand over his heart, and for the first time, he felt something return. Warmth, power, memory. She was giving him strength. Now, he stood and returned to the pilot's seat. The warships were getting closer. He powered the engines higher. Escape wasn't possible. They would catch him. But maybe, just maybe, he could delay them long enough. He didn't plan to survive. He only planned to buy her time. Then something strange happened. The child began to glow. Not just her skin, but the entire room shimmered with her light. Lights flickered. Screens froze. The ship system blinked as if confused. The radar cleared and all enemy ships disappeared. Mark gasped. What did you do? The child looked up. I told them we're not alone. Suddenly, outside the ship, dozens of alien crafts appeared, vessels from Saraya's people, silent, smooth, and powerful. They had cloaked themselves, waiting, Now they were here. Between Mark and the warships. One message flashed across the screen. We stand with the child. And her father, the human warships paused. Then turned away. They weren't prepared for war, not against a united force. They came expecting a weak man and a helpless child. They had no idea they were facing something new, something greater. Mark fell back in his seat, overwhelmed. He looked down at the girl, who had already closed her eyes again, safe and at peace. He whispered, "You saved me." But deep inside, he knew she had saved far more than that. Not just a man, not just a people. She had saved hope itself, and in doing so, she gave Mark something no contract, no coin, no science lab could ever offer. A reason to live. And if anyone ever came for her again, they would learn what happens when a father, even a broken one, stands his ground.